Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams untrue!
Hello, and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk anything and everything webcomics. Today, we're going to be talking about social media and all that comes with that. I'm Rennie. I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomic Kate Blast.
I'm Megan. I use she, her pronouns, and I make the webcomic Sorcery Shenanigans.
I'm Jay, and I don't make a webcomic. I make a social media platform named Inkblot, and I go by the pronouns of he, they.
So, social media, it's such a beast. It feels like sort of the entirety of social media landscape changes almost every couple of years, and it can be really hard to keep up with it all, especially when you're already dedicating so much time to making your webcomics. We're going to dive into the ways that you can make your social media presence work for your comic in sustainable, manageable ways. So, I guess we're going to dive into sort of the questions that we had. So, what goes into having an online presence, especially in today's ever-changing environment for webcomic creators?
I think, especially just like when you first think about such a huge topic of social media, it feels like everything goes into an online presence. Like you should be everywhere at all times, posting every little piece of art or, creation you make for everybody to see. And I don't blame people that feels overwhelming, because that's definitely, I think, where I started at when I tried to tackle social media. But I think what it comes down to is social media, of course, I think we can all agree on, needs to work for you. You need to make it work. And I think that comes with figuring out a very small number of platforms that work well for you. Not only does that mean just being able to reach an audience, your audience, obviously, that you want to reach, the type of people that would be interested in what you're making, but also the social media that just is the most, makes the most intuitive sense for you to use. It should be easy to use. It shouldn't have to feel like you're pulling teeth to figure out how to even do something as simple as post an image, or, I don't want to say send a tweet, but I guess post something akin to a short blog post. I think that should be as simple as it gets.
Yeah, you really got to make sure that it's all about making sure you don't burn yourself out on social media too, because it can really get to be a lot because there's so many different places.
Yeah, so kind of like, bouncing off of what Meg was saying just now, I think that making it work for you, you have to realize that it's a tool. I think that everyone kind of gets up in into the hype of everything and sees the stars align for other people, but I think that when it comes to using that tool, someone prefers like using a ratchet over a hand, like a ratchet gun over like a handgun, you know what I mean? And like that's like, those are two different types but they're the same thing, right? So some people prefer Twitter over Instagram, and some people prefer like Tumblr over Twitter, and so on and so forth. So I think that it really just has to suit you, as Meg said. um, you have to be comfortable with working with it, because either way, if you spread yourself too thin and try to be across all of them, it's just not going to work, and you're not going to see the results. I think that really putting your all into a few of them, even though, yeah, it's a really high risk on doing that, is just the best. And maybe occasionally, going ahead and giving some love to some of the other ones, but having an online presence, you have to understand the grounds, in my opinion. Like with Twitter, you need to be a personality. Like you cannot be just kind of like, I don't know, you can't just sit there and post just like on Instagram. Like Instagram, you can post and pictures and be done. Twitter, I feel like you need to have a personality with it. You can't just rely on just posting bland or just just the everyday, a little bit of text here and a picture there. You have to have an opinion, if I'm putting it lightly.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but I think that having an online presence, it really depends on the platform that you're going with, and I think that that's, you got to remember it's a tool. You have to remember which one makes you comfortable to focus on, because I'll be honest, the the audience, or I guess the users on TikTok, they absolutely scare me versus the users on Twitter. Like there's just a different beast for all different types of platforms. So it's just like you gotta be comfortable and make sure that you're comfortable using it. In my opinion.
Yeah, because so much of certain sites require a certain level of vulnerability, which has its upsides where you can really start making some really interesting and intimate connections. The downside is you can make some very interesting and intimate connections. Um, and for some people, that's scary or unwanted. And existing on sites that really require that, like you mentioned, Twitter, you need that personality and you need an opinion. And you see so much on sites like Twitter or TikTok or other places where that almost starts overshadowing the work that you have for your webcomic. I see so many, like, even in any sort of creative field, like comedians or actors who get outshadowed by their personality. So it's a double-edged sword to walk there, and not everyone's sort of comfortable in that spot, and that's okay. Um, so sort of all about, when you're sort of prepping, sort of what do you want to get out of social media, is you got to sort of choose the platforms that fit your personality the best, to be frank. And like sort of one of the things that, like, if you want a more chill experience, then there are like sites that you just upload your art on, like Instagram or whatever, and you just go, yeah, here's my picture, enjoy. Or that require you to pay more attention to the algorithm and sort of all the back end stuff. But so other sites like Twitter, you can just spout off and it does the work for you. Double-edged sword, though.
No, I agree. I agree 100% on that. Yeah.
So what impact does sort of curating that social media do for your presence, as far as your webcomic or creative works are concerned?
I think as long as you're doing a really good job of curating your social media presence to not only just put as much work into it as you can sort of mentally or just like time wise is an achievable thing for you, because social media is a job all on its own, a beast as we have dubbed it. It's also important to kind of, like, you I think maybe both Rennie and Jay, both of you has said something along the lines of just sort of deciding how much of you as a person or your personality you want on display, because some of that's going to come through on your comic, your artwork, your creative endeavors itself, just because that's how creativity is. There's always going to be some part of you people can see, which is, I guess, a little bit of the uncontrollable aspect, but you can control the social media side of like what you want to add to that. And as long as you are creating that space to the extent at which I guess you feel comfortable being vulnerable, the impact on your curation of your social media, I would say, is probably a huge part of impacting your presence, good or bad. If you're not really sure what you're doing, not really like sure how much you want to put out before you start doing this, like say you're being very vulnerable and kind of sharing a whole lot of stuff, and then you decide you don't want to share all that vulnerability with these people on the internet, and you want to kind of like take it back, it's going to be a little bit of a change, not only for you, and like if that's the change you want, absolutely do it, but the people who came there for that are going to feel, maybe some of them will feel as if they've kind of lost a little bit of that extra connection with you, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, I think that that's yeah, that's something that you have to take into account because when it comes to having a social media in general, as we keep kind of mentioning with the being vulnerable, giving some details about yourself rather than just focusing on your comic, depending on the platform. um, I think that there is people that will just be there for you. And I think I find a lot of just illustrators or artists and webcomic creators. I find that they'll be like, oh well, sorry that I'm talking about this thing XYZ, and it could possibly even be like something really tragic that happened, or like something in their personal life that they're apologizing for, you know because they're posting about it on that social platform. And it's like, why are you apologizing? Like, some of us are here, hopefully most of us are here for you and the comic, but there is going to be those people that are like, oh, I'm unfollowing you, just talk too much about your own personal life. Like, I've literally seen people say that or do that to somebody else, and I'm like, wow, that is that's rough. And I think that also with doing that, you also have to be cautious about creating what I've kind of I guess have been learning about is parasocial interactions or relationships. And those have been really difficult as well, because we're in this day and age where people are creating this kind of false sense of of a relationship, whether intimate or not, depending on how they think it is, with these what I would say content creators, but with people that they only know through the internet, and don't even know them like on a personal level, like not in like private DMs or anything, but like only just like commenting on their posts and things like that. They think that like they're like on a first name basis, and I've had that happen. Um, and it's very weird. First of all, but I think that that's just one of the impacts of having a presence on social media. Other than just having to spend a lot of time. You mentioned that it's a full time job. It is. There's people that go to school for marketing, and social media is like one of the biggest marketing tools, and emphasis on tools, um, that you can use. And like, there's people that have full salaries just to do that. And then now you have this webcomic creator who might be doing the webcomic part time. But then you also have to do the whole social media thing. So, that the impact is it goes a long way. I think that there's a lot of things that definitely come into play if you're gonna, if you're gonna be playing the game of social media. But is it worth it? Yes. Everyone is online. I mean, um, I create, Inkblot. So Inkblot is considered a social network. So from the developer aspect, yes, there is more than a billion people on just the App Store, right? So imagine if you have a presence on one of these social media platforms that are on the App Store, right? Such as Twitter or Instagram or what have you, right? You can take these things and really reach a much larger audience than if you just went to like a local con, or if you, I don't know, put your comic in the local newspaper. So I think that there's a huge impact for having a social media, and there's a lot of pros, but you also have to weigh into account the cons that come with it. Spending a lot of time, the effort that it takes to reply to people, and it almost tends it almost starts to become like a customer service type of thing.
It's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I always, when I look at sort of the history of webcomics, early webcomics had a lot of a same feel as like the old zine scene, where it was that in-person local connection that made most comics and things go. And then when you start getting into sort of early webcomics, it was the same thing but in forums, which it led to that very much of the similar mindset to the old zine culture. But that was back when it was just, all forums, Gaia Online, Facebook and MySpace, where we just didn't have sort of, it wasn't the internet was many places. And nowadays the internet is like 10 sites. So it's a much more densely populated internet space that we have to navigate now. And one of the things you said earlier is absolutely right. It's a full-time job trying to understand that and manage it. There are people who make it their entire living just editing internet content social media stuff. That's their whole thing because so many platforms have their own inner workings, the way they prioritize things, and you have to know all that in order to manage it, and it can get overwhelming while you're wearing the hats for the 7 other full-time jobs webcomic creators have to have. So
Right, yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah, that's that it's crazy that you said that we're on 10 sites, because I don't think anybody truly understands that we really have just put ourselves on 10 sites out of all the millions of sites that there is out there. And I think that that's so crazy to think about, but it's like, wow, no wonder it feels really cramped, you know.
so what are some strategies that you would employ to sort of get your work across and get it seen? Or are there any things that you've seen that gets the work not seen and very much like, oh, I don't know if I'd read this work anymore because of the social media? Or what's a social media that you're like, okay, now I have to read this because this works so well?
I think a lot of the strategies I really like that I see other creators doing is just kind of like not necessarily so much like here's my day-to-day life. Oh, I'm doing this thing today, or uh this weird thing happened, and I'm just going to tell everyone about it. But like the more kind of casual, like, oh, I did this sketch this morning, and the way they phrase the text that goes with it feels not necessarily so formatted for social media, for marketing side of things. It feels very personal. You can kind of feel the person behind it. It doesn't,
Less formulaic.
yeah, it doesn't feel like they've kind of cleaned it up to look real nice, I like it when people do that. Or I think, obviously, I think we can kind of agree from an artist perspective that one of the things that's really popular is seeing kind of like works in progress or the sketch process behind a piece that somebody's done. It's really neat to see that on some like incredibly detailed or really finished pieces. It doesn't necessarily have to be like every piece you put out, but I think it's always nice to kind of see that, or to maybe sometimes not necessarily always post something that's 100% finished. You leave it at the sketch stage and that's the end of the piece. Sometimes it's just really nice to see how people form a drawing from the ground up.
And it can be really interesting to see that side too, because so much of social media is like I have this saying that I've said at least 18 times on this podcast before, but it's very difficult to sort of not compare everyone else's highlight reel with your behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you post some of those behind the scenes, like those those are vulnerable in a sort of a creative sense, but less so in a personal sense. So those are great ways to sort of start relating to your audience in a way that lends itself more to, oh, here we're going to look at the work and we're going to support the work, rather than, oh, I know when this person's bathroom habits are.
No, for real, no. I think behind the scenes is really important, especially for people that are truly interested in how you make the comic, like your most number one fans, basically. I think that those are the ones, like people that are like, even hopefully are like patrons to like your Patreon or like pay sites. So I think that stuff like that can really go a long way. I know I don't have a webcomic. I make Inkblot. So the only thing that I have really is the behind the scenes that I post on the Patreon for our backer, or not our backers, but our patrons and members that are supporting us monthly. And I just kind of post behind the scenes. I let them know, like, and I show them like me kind of stressed out at like 11 p.m. at night, or I'll show them like,
That's a mood.
like this is right, exactly. I'll show them like, hey, like, you're seeing all of like the really polished up stuff. And here is like my actual day to day, me taking meetings at like 9 p.m. or like doing like constant interviews and stuff like that. So it's really important. Social media can give that kind of impromptu, like casual feel for your readers. And I think that that's a strategy that is definitely I 100% kind of go behind um, for a lot of creators if that's what you're going to be using it for. Because like a webcomic creator, you can't like post like yourself like your breakfast in the morning on your webcomic site. Like I would hope not, but
You
I
never
don't think that
know.
that shouldn't be between the pages, but you know what? Maybe. But yeah, no, I think to add to the pot here for a strategy that I think it would help to get your work across or get out there is making connections. Making that's like the number one thing, and don't do it to just do that specifically. Make connections, have other people that you can go to and like bounce ideas off of and stuff like that, rather than just, oh, I'm gonna get in good with this person so I can just have it so that they reblog or retweet my work. Like, no, make your connections, like, really have fun with the creation, and also learning other people, or learning about other people that are also doing the same thing as you, because it is no other feeling like that. Like, there's truly being, like two peas in a pod, if you may. Really, it's something special and unique. And I think that not doing that, I think so. That's a strategy that I suggest. But if you don't do it that way, and I really think that this one's pretty critical or make or break for using social media. If you don't do it that way, I think a strategy that not using that strategy would be considering everybody competition. I think that that is very hurtful, and as you were saying, Rennie, kind of going ahead and comparing yourself to everyone. No, just make friends, enjoy the process, and social media is supposed to be fun, even if it is a tool in most cases. I think that it should be made for for some fun,
Oh yeah.
and get to know other people, and rather than seeing every single person as competition, because that's going to really wear you down, burn you out, and cause a lot more frustration. So I think that that's something that would hurt your work, because maybe that web comic puts out like 3 pages or 3-4 pages a week, and you're sitting up there comparing yourself, and you're only able to do one or two. Maybe that person has a different work style. Maybe that person is can draw quicker, or maybe their comic is not even like the same, I won't say quality, but not like, doesn't have the same like line art or colors, or maybe that one's in black and white and you draw in full color. Like, why would you compare yourself to that person at that point?
Yeah, it starts becoming apples and oranges.
Exactly. So I think that that's a strategy, and I think Meg wants to chime in on this real quick.
Yes, absolutely. Because the minute you started talking about the whole like get to know people, create connections, but definitely not in the way that you're just looking at people like, what can you do for me? That's so important. I think ages ago, before I did webcomics, I I definitely had the perspective when I was just like making illustrations or fun little characters with no story behind them. I felt like I was in competition with everybody else. And I was comparing my things to somebody with like hundreds of thousands of followers who does like we'll say something on the scale of Mona Lisa every day. And I don't know how the switch flipped, but it has definitely been better and obviously way more healthy to realize that, especially in the webcomics sphere, you are not really in competition with everybody else. And I'm going to use a meme that I'm sure we all know. It's literally 2 cakes. And the readers will always look at it and go, oh my god, there are 2 cakes. I can eat 2 cakes. They're not going to go, well, this cake looks really cool. I like this one better. readers, especially me, I'm
So
also
true.
a reader.
Oh
I'm gonna look
yeah.
and I'm gonna go, oh my god, 2 cakes.
Yeah, same.
If
Big
anything,
same.
I'm probably gonna be more like, oh my god, there's 20 cakes.
So
You
many
know?
I
cakes.
felt that.
I'm gonna need help.
There's
I'm
so
gonna
many
need help
cakes.
eating all these cakes.
I know, right?
But it's
And
it's such a good point though that it's like the webcomics community is there's every time I look at it, there's a new webcomic and there's always a new something, and it feels like it's this big space. But in reality, like if you start seeing people as competition, it's gonna start getting lonely real fast because you're not going to be able to make those genuine connections because you're going to be spending all your energy worrying about, okay, am I doing this to set up the next move, or am I doing this so that this is the right way so that this person will draw me fan art or something and that will retweet me? You're thinking you're trying to play 3D chess when all you need to do is play checkers.
no, that I agree with that. I think that if you start making it a competition on top of the competition on top of a competition, you're gonna burn out real fast, and you're gonna learn the hard way of how to not do things. And making friends, enjoying the process. Those are all things that are definitely something that I think that is a strategy, and not even just a strategy, but just part of being a creative in general. I think that that's just part of the journey, and we all have to come to learn to find to find these things. Of course, there's no cheat book or anything. I wish there was, but it's really, there's not really much that you can do to hurt your work if you're just enjoying everything that comes with it.
A
Um,
1000%. It's the
yeah.
amount of works that I have just picked up and started reading because the creator was having the absolute time of their life making it and was sharing that love of creation online.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
I'm not personally I'm
Mhm.
not a big fantasy reader. There has been several fantasy series that I've picked up because I'm just been like, wow, this creator absolutely loves it and I need to see this energy.
Big mood, and also big agree. Uh, I I definitely feel this since coming back from visiting TCAF in Canada. I have so many like comics or little like zines that people put together, and they're just, like short little things like, oh, these are my D&D characters. I just put a whole bunch of sketches together in a book, and I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I don't even need to look inside. Here's the money, take it, give me the thing. There's
One comic,
something.
please.
Yes, more like 5 billion comics. Here's all my money. I'm going to be poor for the rest of my life. But
Mood.
there's something so magnetic about people who are just like making a comic and having the time of their life. And when that is the driving force behind your comic, it's just automatically going to draw people to it who are just excited about you having fun playing in the sandbox that you built.
No, I think what the word you were looking for, I want to say, is the passion for it. I think
Yes.
it's a beautiful thing, and it is so, as you were saying, magnetic. It's contagious. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it's everything that you're like, you're just so happy to be listening to this person that's so passionate about what they're doing, that it's just like you, even if, just like what Rennie said, like, doesn't even like, what was it, fantasy, or
Yeah.
was it, yeah, doesn't even like the fantasy genre, but it's just like, this person is just so passionate about it, I'm attracted, and I'm gonna go over there and read about it, like that's what passion can do for someone. And I think that's a beautiful thing, in honesty. Sorry about that, Meg. I didn't mean to
Oh,
interrupt. I
please.
was like, passion, that's it.
I
um,
guarantee you there are, if not have been and will be, millions of times that I will skirt around the exact word I am looking for. And if somebody can find it for me and yell it, hands down, just like respect. Please help my brain out.
No, you were there. You had it. It was there, and I just need to help.
Yeah, you were just like, here you go, I got you.
Oh, love it, love it.
But yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
1000%. There's just like that passion, and I think for me, that answers the second part of the question. That is the 1,000,000% obvious thing to me, that you could absolutely destroy your social media presence by not having passion in what you're making. If you are, and we might have used this kind of setup before in a previous episode, but if you were just spinning a wheel with some buzzwords on it to create your next comic in the hopes that it will be the next big popular thing, unless you are
Not
truly
the buzzwords.
I don't know,
Ew.
right? So many of them, my god. If you're just going like, I'm gonna make a comic about, I don't know, cats in space with time travel,
I'd still
and
read it.
I mean, I would too, I'll be honest.
I would-
maybe
I would
maybe I
too.
should write this one down.
Yeah.
But, like, if those are the 3 buzzwords you get off of your little wheel, and those 3 buzzwords do not make you excited to make that comic, if there's no passion behind it, that automatically for me is like the number one way to kill your social media presence.
And like bouncing off of that too is the one thing that sort of can really hurt the way that people interact with your work is if you're spending a lot of time on social media with a lot of, negative self-talk, or if you talk poorly about your own work or things like that. And while those feelings and emotions that you're having are probably they're valid, you're allowed to feel those things, and every single creative on the planet has felt those things at least twice. It's not a great way to sort of endear yourself to readers. Those are things that, maybe you have a private group chat with some friends that you're able to sort of let off some steam. Maybe there's, different outlets for that, but social
Maybe go
media
get some
really...
therapy.
Yeah, therapy's great. We love therapy on
Yeah.
Straight Toast.
Yay, therapy.
Therapy. Sponsored by therapy today.
But yeah, it's on social media. That's like you're going outside and writing on the side of your house what's going on at some point, and it can be really difficult as a reader to parse through that, because there have been several times where maybe I've not been in the best spot mentally, and I go, okay, this person tweets a lot about X. I can't really handle X, so I'm just going to mute them for a bit, and then you forget they're muted. It could be something as innocent as that. And while almost never is there any sort of malicious intent there with putting that out there on social media, it's definitely something to consider. That is for the back rooms, not the front rooms.
100%. I think if you're going to use social media and to use it to promote your work, you definitely need to make sure that because that's at that point that's going to be a channel for your business. And that's why people make priv accounts or just private accounts. That's why people specifically just have it so that they go vent to their friends, or like you said. So there's no venting, there's no really going in on someone on social media. And time and time again we've seen this happen.
Oh boy, have we
different
ever.
parts of our community, right? Yeah. And I think it's you got to understand when it stops being a cute, cozy, personal account. In the beginning, it's gonna seem really personal. You'll put some stuff out there, and along with your comic, because it's just okay, readers want to get to know me. And so we were talking about earlier, being a little adding some vulnerability to it, and posting about, I don't know, some whips or your process or things like that. And I was talking about how someone was even saying to other creators that I've seen, hey, you're posting too much personal stuff, I'm gonna unfollow. I've seen creators make accounts just for their comic, and maybe that might be something that you might want to do. But again, there's a lot of people, even though there is some of them, some people, they are a minority when they were like, oh, I only want to read about the comic. Okay, that's fine. There's a small amount of people that will say that. A lot of people are interested in the mind behind the comic. And I think that that's really important. That you're putting your mind, heart, soul, blood, tears, everything into this comic, and there will be people that are interested in who's making it. And I think that that's something that's really truly important. But you gotta have a limit. You gotta draw a line. Like, you should not be talking about a lot, like some dirty laundry on your social media. Even though you might think like, yeah, they're interested in my personal life, but are they interested in that part of your person? Probably not. Probably not. That's not a good look. And again, it becomes a business thing. And I think that once that channel becomes more business, and also probably another thing to avoid when you get a larger platform, you really cannot do those things. My other company has about 20,000. Inkblot right now has numbers looking about like 16,000 followers. These numbers, I can't act a fool. I cannot. That there is dangerous things that can happen in terms of like, if I'm like venting about someone, and maybe those followers might really relate to me or really sympathize with me, and those folks can go and do things on my behalf and to this person that I'm calling out. So things like that, you need to, once you start really building up a big following on these social platforms, you have to think about the other ways that you can't do, or the other things that you cannot do with that platform, because social media can be really, it's like Rennie said, it's a double-edged sword. You might gain a lot of following, and then it's just going to be like, okay, well, now I'm responsible for this following. um,
Uh,
and I won't go into that because that's
yeah,
a totally different
and
thing.
once you get to
But
that, it's more that episode's a really short one. It's a, how the heck did you all get here?
right. Exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
no, I just think that there's definitely ways that can hurt your following, and that's about it. But for real, I think there's a balance, and I think Rennie, I think that's you got this.
yeah. Oh my God. I know that there's like you mentioned, one of the best ways, sort of, if you start getting overwhelmed by sort of that balance, is to have sort of a professional Twitter. I know so many people who have a Twitter account that's just for their comic, where they just tweet about the comic, and that's great. um and it's a good place, sort of, as an archive, have all the art, all the updates, everything there, and then they use their personal account to retweet that and spread the message. That can, for a lot of people, sort of separate the two to make it feel easier to be a little more yourself and less like you're representing a brand. um and that's just a nice way to do that. On the complete flip side is, a lot of people get hung up on the numbers, and we've talked about that in other episodes. Um, but one of the things that I've done on a couple of my different social media sites that do display like follower information and stats is, I've downloaded extensions to Firefox and Chrome that block out those numbers. Like, I don't want to see people's followers numbers. I don't want to see how many likes a certain tweet is doing. And I could turn it off if I'm going out for like marketing research and being like, okay, what's doing well these days? But like, if that's stuff that overwhelms you, there are extensions that can really tailor at least some of the bigger sites to that.
Yep. Yeah. No, just to kind of chime in on that, in the development part of social networking or social medias, even Inkblot, we have that feature actually, where built in you can turn off your following and followers, or
And
you
that's
can turn
great.
off
I
the
love
likes. Yeah,
that.
yeah, we are working more to make tools for that, because we understand that some creators don't want to see those things. And then on the flip side, there's creators that want to be like, that literally have told us, we want to see all the things. And obviously, this is years of feedback back and forth, and at that point, we have to add just both sides, because of course you can't make just everyone happy. But you definitely have to have the tools there for the people to be able to have the option to turn it on or off. Because, maybe there's a person that wants to see all of the things, and then maybe a couple of years down the line, they're like, I don't want to see any of it anymore. I'm good. So I think that, you like we mentioned earlier, you need to make it work for you. It's just a tool. Definitely make it work for you. What are you okay with giving, and what are you, and rather than just getting, because you're going to give a lot to social media, 100%. Whether you think it's just adding like a little bit of personal touch, or just giving a little bit about your personal life, but you're going to spend a lot of time. It's gonna be frustrating, really, no matter what platform you're on, especially with these days, to be quite honest.
Well, I think that brings us to a close here. Thank you so much for joining us, Jay. This has been a pleasure talking to you about social media. I've been Rennie. You can read my work at kateblast.com.
I've been Megan. You can read my work at sorceryshenanigans.com.
I'm Jay, or I have been Jay. You can find out more about Inkblot on inkblotapp.info, or just go straight to the source, inkblot.art, and hope to see you over there.
Thank you for listening to Screen Tones, a webcomic podcast. Want to know some other ways to support us? Check out our Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/screentonescast, where your support will help us create more episodes, reach cool extra bonus goals, and keep us talking about anything and everything webcomics. You can also find us on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and our Discord server. Thank you so much for listening, sharing, rating, and supporting, and we'll see you next time.